Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. So yesterday we started talking about this idea of overthinking, right? And I love this because this overthinking thing is, I feel like I've kind of mastered overthinking. You know, I feel like this is an area of expertise. I can certainly relate to this idea of overthinking. So John Acuff brilliantly calls it the soundtrack. He says it's the soundtrack, and the name of his book is Soundtracks, The Surprising Solution to Overthinking. And in this book, he's just got a ton of ideas on how to fix it. But what I'm going to tell you today just super blew me away, and it made me feel so much better. And wait, when I unload this today, guys, you are going to just say thank you. I promise you, because I did. I said my silent prayers to John and said thank you very much because it was super helpful. So let's kind of go through it a little bit because, you know, yesterday I saw tons of ahas of a lot of you saying, you know, in the comments, they were saying, oh my gosh, yes, this was powerful, etc. So I'm teasing you. If you haven't watched yesterday's show, get in there and watch yesterday's show. Traditionally, what we do, just FYI, is we start the week with sort of with kind of an overriding theme so that we can build and do and all of that. Otherwise, I find myself going way too long, and I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I'm honoring of your time. Sometimes I do go long, and I apologize in advance. But if we have the whole week, we can build on this and we can understand it, and it can be super helpful, right? So that's what we're going to do. So today we're going to be discuss creating the actions that we need to change our own soundtrack, because we all have them, and our soundtrack is just the loops that we have in our heads. The soundtrack is just the thoughts that we overthink. And, you know, there was something too, and I can't remember where I was reading it, but basically they said if we were to take all of our thoughts, the ones that we put on loops, it would go like span about 6.5 million miles, because that's the way our brains work, that fast spinning, fully spinning. And can you tell sometimes? I know I certainly can. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm spinning a little bit out of control. But soundtracks, remember, soundtracks are powerful. That's why I love the analogy of our thinking and calling it a soundtrack. Because you think about any kind of movie you've ever seen, and sometimes you even remark, wow, what a great soundtrack that was, or the music was so amazing for that movie. It appropriately lines up with what the movie is trying to convey. As a matter of fact, it underscores it and it lifts it up. It's almost foundational to building the tension in the movie or the funny moment or, you know, whatever it's trying to do. But soundtracks do that. Music has the ability to be able to do that. And they also create lives. Soundtracks create lives. They create lives in what they're saying. And that's why I really want to get into this, because again, you know, we all have some kind of a negative loop going on. Some of us have tons, and they're on repeat. And it's not necessarily the ones we're interested in, but it's the ones that seem to pop up. So we want to create and orchestrate our own soundtracks instead of inadvertently playing something that we don't want in our lives. Because think about it this way. To me, it's sort of the inappropriateness of like a slapstick, you know, Charlie Chaplin-like soundtrack to a big, heavy, dramatic scene of, you know, whatever. You know what I mean? So what we want to do is make sure that the soundtrack that is tracking along with the movies of our lives are on point and appropriate and not taking us down and not diverting the traffic, so to speak, and keeping us in line with what our dreams are, not taking us off track. So if your soundtrack defeats you, well, before you even get off the couch, let's start taking a peek, a few ideas on what we can do. And one of the things that there's three things that John has in his book that says that I really like, and we'll kind of unpack just a bit, is 3 R's. One is to retire your broken soundtrack. 2 is to replace them with new ones. And then 3 is to put it on repeat until they're as automatic as the old ones, which in theory is quite simple, isn't it? Execution, on the other hand, well, a little different, just a wee bit different. So what are we going to do with this then? How are we going to get through all of this? Because this is the process. We agree with this. We understand this. You know, we know that we got to retire some of this garbage that is no longer serving, or probably some of it that's never served. But on the other hand, you know, how do we do this? How do we get into the weeds on this one? Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is choose what you're going to listen to the most. That's one of the biggest things. And, you know, it's when we make this decision that we're going to pay attention to our thoughts that we have the opportunity to be able to do this. Because, you know, we talked about this yesterday, thinking about our thinking. Is this thought even something that I want in my life? Is this thought even is it going to help? What's it going to do? Or is this taking me down that same track that I've been going down and it doesn't help at all? Could be, but you know, it's, you know, this is just what it is. So I just want you to remember something, that you already know the soundtrack. Do you? You already know the soundtrack. If I were to say to you, for example, bye bye, Miss American Pie, your turn. Could you repeat back what it is that the next line is to that song? Could you? And I'm going to look at the comments, and I'm going to bet that there's a lot of people here who already know that. That is an example of what the soundtrack in our minds are. We listen to music, we hear the music, we memorize these songs. Have you ever been sitting in a car and you, oh my gosh, I haven't heard this song in 30 years. And then you sing along with the song on the radio, you know every single word. Those are the loops in our head. They know every single word. There it is. Drove my Chevy to the levee, and the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, "This will be the day that I die." Of course, we all know that song. We know that song. Some of us remember when it came out. See, look at everybody. They all know that. But I want you to see the overlay. I want you to see how this song is just exactly how the negative loops in our heads work and how they become soundtracks for our lives. Because that's what we default to. We automatically go to it. And even if we hadn't thought about that song for like 30 years, we still remember every single word. And that's how our brains operate. That's why we get into this. And that's why it's so critically important to choose what you listen to. How about this? I'll give you another one. When you're listening to the radio and a song comes on, you know it back to front, but you hate the song. Do you sit there and just listen to it? No, you change the channel, don't you? Or worse, if you don't have the opportunity, that's the only channel that's coming in, you turn it down, don't you? You don't want to listen to it. You don't like it, right? How do you like that? So stay with me on this, because we're tracking on something really, really good. Number 2 is soundtracks create hyper focus, don't they? So why not stop the hyper focus on the fear? Because that's a lot of times what all of this stuff is based on. It's all sitting on that wobbly old fear fence of ours, right? And instead of focusing on that, why not focus on our dreams or our visions, our goals? What if we did that? What if we said, oh my gosh, here we go again? What if we had that kind of an attitude of sort of like just an exhausted kindergarten teacher? Oh, here it comes again. Just sort of like, oh, really? Are you going to do this again with our brains? What if we did that? I think I introduced that because, again, it's not like that. It's not a one and done thing, but it's also when the awareness is there, the awareness can start to tap it down a little bit. So here's a couple of things that you can ask, which I find to be interesting questions to ask yourself as these thoughts start to crop up, as the soundtrack starts to play again. Is it true? Is it helpful? And is it kind? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Now, think about this for a minute. I mean, first of all, can't we just be so evil to ourselves? The way we speak to ourselves sometimes is beyond. But here's the deal. I think that if we look at this, the way that we speak to ourselves, in the same way that we would teach our children about gossip, are you going to repeat that? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? That's how I taught my kids about what gossip was and why we don't do it, right? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? What if we did that with ourselves? Now we're starting to, get rid of all of this stuff. Now we're starting to really get into the weeds of it. Now we're starting to not let it go by unnoticed. We're paying attention. So these are the exact same questions that we should be asking, teaching our kids about gossip. And these are the things that we should be not gossiping about our own selves to ourselves. It's really a lethal thing. You know that. So what can we do to get beyond all of this? And I've got, this is the part, this is the gem right here. Here it comes. You ready? David Thomas, he's a psychologist and author. He's written like 6 books. He said, we'd all love a switch to be able to just turn this stuff off. He said, but really what it is a dial. Okay, hear me on this. Because here's the thing. If we want this and we think, all I have to do is find the switch. Where's the switch? It's like walking into a new house. You're walking into the new house and you're going, okay, so I've got all these switches over here. Which one's for the kitchen? Flick, 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 trying to figure out where it all goes. Well, this is a trigger for perfectionism, isn't it? Think about that. If we think that we could just go in and say, okay, so here's the problem. Here's the negativity. Here's what I've been doing forever and a day. But we can't flick the switch on it. We instead have to turn the dial down, because the dial mentality then recognizes that the goal isn't to stop listening forever to all those broken soundtracks, but to turn them down. And the reason why I say this is because we can't do that. We don't have that kind of a superpower to be able to go in and instantaneously fix it. We just don't. Most of us. I mean, I haven't met anybody who does. So when it starts to get loud, and because we've made a decision to start noticing and start questioning, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Then we have the opportunity to say, oh, you know what? Just tap it down. I don't want to listen to American Pie. I don't want to drive the Chevy to the levee, right? I don't, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear that. So yes, we want to retire them, because we talked about that, retire. And what was the third one? Gosh, repeat. What did we say? Retire, replace, and repeat. That's the ideal situation. We don't get to do that without the process though, y'all. We just don't. So what we do is this. We figure out that the dial is the way. The dial is the path. The dial is the thing that we can do. Yes, right, like that. Yes, right now. We can turn down the dial because we can hear it and we can just say, oh, It's sort of like I put white noise on at night, when we go to sleep. I put white noise on, so in case there's any other peripheral noise, it won't wake me up. We can do that with a dial too, can't we? We just switch things on and just say, that's enough of that. So you know what this does? This is the cool thing, is that it starts to work with your body's chemistry. And once again, if we can start lining back up with our body's chemistry, then we can start pushing the right buttons to get the right output, period. So one of the first things you want to do is think about releasing some serotonin. Serotonin makes you feel good. So does dopamine. And how do we do that? Go pet the dog. It's simple. Go pet the dog. Go outside. Get some sunshine. Meditate. Get a massage. Exercise. Think about happy, wonderful, loving thoughts of someone that you love, of someone that is a memory of yours. It's a good thing to do. Number 2, gratitude. Here's what gratitude does. It switches the focus. It switches the focus to poor, pitiful me into, oh my goodness, look at how blessed I am. Look at all these things. Look at all this wonderful stuff, you know? I think of that every once in a while when I start to get a little, a little snippy, like, oh, I just want to, everybody else, I want to eat this. I want to do this. Excuse me. But the fact is, I am not waiting in line at a Red Cross truck for someone to feed me. I am such a blessed woman. So are you. And if we can start figuring this out and contrast the right things, not with envy and jealousy of people who have more, but contrast with people who have less, and believe and know how blessed you are, that gratitude swells. And it does create a new chemical reaction in your body. So it's a big deal. Number 3, believe it or not, is to step outside of yourself and go do something. Go play with your child. Put a puzzle together. Get out the Legos, the Connects. I was walking by O.P. Taylor's. It's a cute little toy store right here in Brevard, North Carolina. And Caroline goes, look, I was with Caroline, and there was this huge window with a Connects Ferris wheel going around and around. I just remember those being everywhere. And I took a picture of it and sent it to my son, and he goes, I remember those. Of course you do. But doing something like that takes you outside of yourself. And now you have to concentrate and build something and do something. And it causes a different pathway to be executed in your brain. And it's really good for you, believe it or not. Number 4 is to do some brain dumps and some lists. Here's something. I've talked about this before, but I just want to, different context, talk about this. Goals are projects. That's all a goal is. It's just like, I want to get this or do this or become this or whatever it is. It's a project, and it starts with the high view of overall, like, what do I want? What do I want this to end up being? What am I trying to create here or do or become or purchase or whatever it is? And then figuring out, and usually it's something big, like buy a house, lose some weight. You know where I'm going with all this. Create a new careers, start a business. All of it demands to have a goal for it. You can't just shoot from the hip and do this. You can't just shoot from the hip and expect to get any kind of results. It's going to be a little bit here and a little bit there. It needs a plan. This is why we use 2 things. One is to brain dump it. Just get it all out. You don't have to organize it, by the way. This is what brain dumps are about. You don't have to organize it. You could have something in there like start flossing every night, and then also clean out a closet, and don't forget to return library books, because those are all things that are just on your mind. Then once everything is out from those brain dumps, and just a massive brain dump, start making lists out of all of it. Make all kinds of lists out of all of it. Did you know that this is one of the best ways to remove the tangles? It's like putting cream rinse in your hair and getting the knots out. It makes all the sense in the world. And your brain understands that. And it's actually grateful for it. And it helps to create and clean the slate so that you have an opportunity to start a little bit over. I love that. And this is number 4, by the way, is to brain dump and create lists. If you just brain dump and then don't do anything with it, it's just going to be another minute before you're going to need to brain dump again and do something with it. Making a list does something with it. And it's super helpful. I'm all about that. And it just makes all the difference in the world. And number 5 is be your own task rabbit. Okay. You know, there is an app that you can buy called, or get on your phone, called Task Rabbit. And these are people who will do anything for you. But here's what they've found when they've done some research, is that oftentimes what happens is when we're stuck, we're not just stuck in our head, but we're stuck on our butts. We're not doing anything. We're sitting on the couch. We are playing Netflix on repeat. We're on our phones. We're doing we're doing all the stuck things. These are stuck actions. If we stop, put down the phone, get up off the couch, and then go and walk the dog, declutter a drawer, right? Sweep the porch. Something that you can start from, get going from start and then end up finishing it, is super satisfying. And it lets your brain know that, yes, you're capable of starting something, and you're also capable of finishing something. This is huge, and it helps in our thinking, doesn't it? It's massive. And number 6, the last one is to talk about it. You know, we all have stuff that we get stuck on. We all have negative loops. We all have a soundtrack that, gosh darn it, can we just flick that switch off? Well, we can turn it down too by talking it out a little bit. You know, posting and saying, you know, in the Hot Melt Sprint group, or if you're in Inner Circle, and just saying, you know, it's so interesting because this is where I get stuck. This is the loop that I get stuck in. And we start talking about it. And you know what? This is what happens. There's 2 things that happen. One is that first of all, your friends are going to relate, because we're human beings and we all do this, right? But the second thing that's so interesting about it is they're going to say, oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Or I know exactly the kind of behavior that you're talking about. I do it too, you know? And then, but let me tell you this story, which I like, because the only time I really want one-uppers, right? I want somebody to tell me how crazy your story is, what the thing is that you remembered, you know, your crazy loop. This is how we get, first of all, it's kind of social proof, if you will, that we're all in this together. And the second thing is that it's nice to have company, isn't it? As we do this together, isn't it nice to know that you're not alone? You're not the only one with these negative loops. You're not the only one with a negative soundtrack. But there's actually ways that we can turn down the dial and get ourselves to the place where we're actually in the driver's side for the first time, maybe in our lives, to be able to steer the ship exactly where we want to go. Simply by turning down the dial, hanging out with the friends, putting some stuff together, even playing Legos with our kids. What do you think? Grandkids, even. I think it's great. I love this. I think it's such a good topic. And it's helpful because, you know, this is where we get stuck. This is the stuck place. Well, this is how we get unstuck too. I hope you found that helpful. Thanks so much for being here with me. I appreciate you all. Peace be with you. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.